Hey everybody, so we are back here at the Old Hanover Presbyterian Churchyard. We're going to go through this quick as just a video. It's July 4th, 2025. I just did the video for the celebration of our 4th anniversary, talk about the significance of this place with the Hanover resolves and the individuals that are buried here. And we're going to make a quick run around this cemetery and check it out again and check out the plaques and all that kind of stuff, and then do a walk around. We will be back here again to start the Lebanon PA 250 series off. It's appropriate because this is probably where the Hanover resolves, the very first Declaration of Independence, airing of grievances type document that happened on June 6, 1774. Most likely happened here at the church, which was torn down probably around 1880. So that church no longer exists, but the cemetery and churchyard still does. So let's turn this around. Let's check out the cemetery. So here you have a plaque that's to the wall restoration. Goes around the entire cemetery. These old churchyards usually had these stone walls around them, and they wound up fixing it. I love the iron gate here as well. This thing's always not fun to try to open, but we'll figure it out. So here they have, in memory of the veterans of the American Revolution who lie buried here, there's a name here, Colonel John Rogers. He is actually not buried here. He's buried over at Derry Presbyterian Churchyard. He is buried over Derry Presbyterian Churchyard. He was the co-chairman of the Hanover Resolves. I have to look and make sure whether I'm right or not, but John Barnett, I didn't realize, I'm not sure if he's buried here either. He is the man that actually, he was one of the signers. I believe he's the one who was one of the signers of the Hanover Resolves as well. About 5 miles west of here was Barnett's Fort, and there's a really cool story with him. Sad story, but his son actually in the French and Indian War, he was captured and was taken as a captive. He was returned at the end after the diplomacy and the treaty, but I think his son would go on to fight in the Revolution. John Barnett, though, I thought he was buried somewhere else. I have to look back at, I have the lecture series, I have the genealogy of these guys, where they were buried and all that kind of stuff, but he was actually a really influential guy. And it's cool too seeing a couple of the Rogers. I would assume they were either brothers or somehow related, but you know, these families, these were the early families of this area, and they served their country not only in the American Revolution, but a lot of them, like John Rogers and John Barnett, would serve the colony of Pennsylvania at that time in the French and Indian War. So this is registered at Pennsylvania Historic Places. They have the plaques there. Old Hanover or Manada Presbyterian Churchyard, established in 1736. So I thought the church had started a couple years prior to that. It's just finding these exact dates sometimes is not the easiest thing in the world. This is where it gets interesting, because you try to open this, and I always struggle with this. We're gonna pause. Definitely not made to be easy, but still really pretty gate. So you'll see all across here are a ton of different flags, a lot of Revolutionary War, Civil War veterans, and all that. There's also a very unique stone here down over this way, which we'll go visit, of two people that were killed in the French and Indian War. Say it's like a massacre and that type of thing, but you know, they were just two people at their homestead, and an attack came through the Manada Gap. It's one of those gaps in the Blue Mountain, and this is Samuel. It looks like it starts with an F. was like a Finney, but that's he's an American Revolutionary War vet. This is just, I love coming to this cemetery because it's just beautiful. And then, like I said, there's so much history. Here's one of these examples of these sort of little standing stones. Sometimes that's all they had, and they just didn't have the money. And you also see this corner of the cemetery, that's actually full. They would also do something with these cemeteries sometimes during the French and Indian War period. If there were attacks, they would actually bury the Native Americans that they killed. Usually they'd have them in a corner somewhere, and they bury them one on top of the other, sort of to hide how many they had actually killed. Just because they were worried if they knew how many people they had killed in these attacks, that the retribution would be far worse. So this is a pretty cool stone. This is the in memory of John and Isabel Craig, killed by Indians the 22nd of October, 1756. That was right towards the beginning of the French and Indian War, which I believe began in 1755 and went through to 1763. And there was actually a break in the middle. And then the second part of the war was called Pontiac's War. But, yeah. They actually had to replace this stone because the original stone, there was something called relic hunting. So if you had a stone that was notorious having to do with a crime or something, in this case, people would break off pieces of the stone and keep them, and eventually they destroyed the stone to a degree that they had to replace this. So this is a much newer stone than the rest of these, because it would have been a stone in 1756, so it would have been a lot like any of these here. Probably would have been a red stone, sort of sandstone is what these are. These are the much older one, and you see some of these with these crown. Those are usually Revolutionary War period. They were pretty popular, I think, through into the 1820s. But these would be purely 1700s. And these ones are sort of scary to try to clean, which is why I haven't even graduated to marble yet, but these ones are a lot more porous. Anytime you have like a limestone, they're more brittle. These stones here, the marble, they actually, when you clean them, will be like a pure white. I mean, they're really stunning stones. But the sandstone and the limestone, those were the first popular stones because they were readily available. Then you would have moved over to the marble, and then eventually it would go on to like granite. But you see these flat stones. We talked about this a couple different times. There's the marble in white. Sad it's laying flat over, but there was a unique European tradition, very much England, Victorian era. You would start seeing these flat stones. They viewed death a lot differently than we did. And they basically would view the cemeteries would be viewed sort of as like parks. And after Sunday church service, they would come here when they had these flat stones, and in essence, they would picnic. This is a really cool, just look at that, the detail on that is really, really neat. But, so they would literally have picnics on these stones and in essence honor and commune with their forebearers. And that was just one of those unique traditions that lasted probably for 50, 60 years. Because you'll see a bunch of these. I always wondered what they were, and that's what they were. See a couple other Revolutionary War vets. I mean, you saw from the marker there's quite a few buried here. And like I said, there's a lot of different open areas like that. That's all, there were people in them. So all that area, there used to be stones. You know, it's just, once you start talking like 250 years, these stones break down. And it was probably a lot of sandstone, limestone. The very, very early settlers probably would not have had the money to afford these types of things, because you were basically just trying to survive. And I like these stones. It's like cool scroll work and stuff like that. It's just, every single time I come back here, I see something different, and it's just such a neat experience. I absolutely love doing this, coming to these old cemeteries, because especially these older ones like this, they just have such a history, and it's just so extraordinary. You think about, we would not be where we're at if it was not for these folks. Every single one of these stones, they have a story, they have a full life, joys, sorrows, triumphs, tragedies. You know, we think about our lives, how full they are. Every single one of these people had such full lives, and then you put on top of that the struggle just to survive is really impressive. This is such a neat stone here. This guy was a Revolutionary War vet. In memory of James Todd, who departed this life on, I believe it would be the 2nd day of September 1783, age 71 years. It's so neat when you can actually read a lot of these things. A lot of these stones, normally you'll be in some of these older cemeteries, although I'll be in like German. The folks here were mainly English, Irish, Scottish, and you can tell by the names that that's what their heritage was. I definitely plan on coming here, probably doing some work on some of these stones. I'd like to actually clean that Isabel, the Craigs, just to get it cleaned up again and stuff like that, because it's just starting to get some of that the darker stuff is like a black mold. Here's another one of these unique stones where it's like a piece of limestone. It's a field stone. There is one over here I'll take you to as well, and that's probably another field stone. And there's probably stones underneath the ground here at different places. It's just a matter, if you go in with like LiDAR or something like that, you'd be able to tell what's all under here. But this is all, like I said, there's people buried underneath here. And you see a bunch of these stones, just sort of an example. Around the walls at different places, you'll see these stones. Over here is a whole slew of them that are leaning up against the wall. They broke off of their foundation and stuff like that. And here's a whole bunch of them. They're in essence, they're not readable anymore and all that, which is such a shame. But it's just an example of all these stones used to be out in here somewhere, and they just, over time, they break down, vandalism, things like that. I'll tell you one thing, it is a beautiful day today. I was a little worried because it's been so hot, but today is just, with this breeze, it really is stunning. There's even like a dew on the ground and everything. But there's a stone over here where it's unique because it looks like it's personally carved. Hopefully I can find it where this is. It's right over in this section here somewhere. But another one of these old sandstones. But these are the type of old cemeteries where the preservation efforts certainly need to be made. Hoping we can find it. I know there's one over in Greenpoint that's a lot like that. You'll see these every now and then where they just didn't have the means to afford to get a stone, so they went and got a stone themselves, sort of cleaned it up as best as they could, and then shaped it as best they could. I think this might be it. Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is it. This one's hard to read, but this one looks like somebody took a stone, did what they could, and then this one may be one that I wind up touching up at some point once I'm more comfortable. And I think the JN at the top, I saw that on some of the other ones, is probably the person that was the person that carved the stones and everything. Unless JN means something. If you know that, shout it out. But really is truly our hometown history, and it's well worth coming out here and just remembering these guys, honoring them, and being thankful for all the sacrifices that they made. There's an Ann Dixon. There are actually there's another one that looks like a JN, but one of the Dixon family actually signed the Hanover Resolves. He was a young guy. He was only like 24, and he died a year later. I'm assuming from disease. They don't say otherwise, but that family was really well known north or south of here on the Swatara Creek near Palmyra. There was actually an area, like a ford almost on the creek, that was known as Dixon's Ford for probably like 150 years because they were a very famous family. The guy who died early, who signed the Hanover Resolves, his brother, his son would fight in the American Revolution and got killed up in Canada. He was in the force with Benedict Arnold, where Benedict Arnold got injured severely, but his son got killed, and they say he never ever recovered from it. It was such a devastating blow. But as always, I want to say thanks for coming along, and we'll explore more history here in the future, and we'll see you all about town.